He has like a spare burn deck for his girlfriend. His girlfriend said, you know what, you can just play burn in the tournament and that's fine. And this was a couple weeks back when we were in Worcester, and he ended up getting 9th on breakers. Yeah. And he was like, hey, I kind of like this deck. So he's been playing it ever since, and he's 4-1 now. And burn is actually pretty well positioned. We felt this way for the Grand Prix last week too. So Price of Progress will be the first draw here for Jim. Though the biggest defense here to Jim's deck is the snow-covered mountains. They're unacceptable.
He plays all snow-covered. Oh, he does have 13 snow-covered mountains.
They're unacceptable. Patrick is unhappy about this, trying to teach Burn how to be a burn aficionado is what Patrick is trying to do, and he does not approve, as here is the stifle.
Most mountains are snow-covered. It's inaccurate land to be playing.
You are correct. You are correct about that.
Or at least the tall mountains. And I'd want to be playing tall mountains. I wouldn't want to be playing like Appalachian mountains, You
want the big stuff.
I want the big stuff. I want to go with like the Rockies.
Mount Rainier in Seattle. I think that's a big one. It's a dormant volcano, apparently. It could blow at any time. That's kind of scary.
Okay, it's not near anything, right?
Everyone says, so I have this theory, as Ryan is casting a brainstorm, that like if Mount Rainier started to go off, why can't I just drive to Canada and just be okay? Everyone's like, no, you would die way before that. It's like, I can't just get in the car and just go north and I would win?
Well, volcanoes don't usually, you get some notice. You get notice when they're becoming really active. You're not, by the time it's erupting, you can't just like get in your car and start driving then.
Okay.
It's probably too late at that point.
It's too late at that point? Okay.
Yeah, if there's lava coming out of it, you're in trouble.
I'm under the impression the lava moves slow. Because I've seen movies where it moves slow.
It doesn't move slow when it comes out of the volcano. It comes out of the volcano pretty fast.
Okay. All right. I'll have to rethink this strategy. Or move. That's also an option, but that's neither here nor there. Jim has searched up a mountain.
Those are cold snap snow-covered mountains.
Yeah, no, they're nice. They're nice, actually.
You'd go with cold snap over Ice Age.
Well, I like the newest artwork of whatever card you can play. So, given that these are the newest snow-covered mountains you can play, I prefer these.
Okay.
I also I like the new card frame more than the old card frame, which I'm probably just wrong about, but I just like it more. So, it's a Rift Bolt that's on suspend here. Ryan is going to draw a card now. One thing that Jim doesn't know is what Ryan's playing. Well, he does now, so never mind.
So it could have been a Teamer Delver deck up until this point. And that's actually a matchup that Burns fine with. Infect can be tougher. Now, Ryan plays Blighted Agent into this Rift Bolt, so I'm curious whether or not Ryan's going to save it. Because now Jim can either choose to target the Blighted Agent or target Ryan. I think he goes at the creatures in this matchup.
If I'm Jim, I'm going at the Blighted Agent. I think, right? Like, you just have to keep those off the table. Those are what matter. If you keep one on the table, you risk yourself just dying.
They hit too quickly is the problem.
Yeah.
3 to the Blighted Agent is attacking for what amounts to 2 damage a turn just on its own. If you're Rift Bolting their face and they're hitting with Blighted Agent, the agents are going to win that fight.
Also, if he's saving his Blighted Agent with like a pump spell, like he has an Invigorate in his hand right now, if he uses that, you're so happy.
That's also a win.
Yeah. There goes Blighted Agent.
Yeah, so I'm a little surprised that Ryan would play that into the Rift Bolt and then not have an answer for the Rift Bolt.
See Jim's hand. He drew a mountain for the turn. There's a Chain Lightning over there. There's a Price of Progress. There's the Lava Spike. We go upstairs, put you to 16.
Only one use for that one.
Chain Lightning going upstairs again. I'm going to daze that. Pass it back Ryan's way.
Ryan's pretty happy to be able to snag a spell with that daze. One of the things when playing Burn is a card economy is really important to try to not get your spells dazed or spell pierced.
Every card counts that you draw, so you don't want any of them to get countered. Glistener Elf? Yep. Pass it back. David's going to draw a copy of Price of Progress. This is a card I actually like that's picking up in popularity a little bit. We saw some blue-red Delver decks playing it, like maybe one in their main or maybe one in their sideboard last weekend at the Grand Prix, but given the result of what won the Grand Prix, Jeskai Stoneblade and some blue-red Delver decks making top 8, Price might actually be pretty good now. Infect, too, it's good against.
Infect is a deck with a lot of non-basics. It just has the one forest. Because some of the non-basics are cards like Ink Moth, they're not usually a deck that can afford to wasteland themselves in response to price.
Become Immense was the draw. We have seen that one do some things.
5 cards in the graveyard here for Ryan.
Yeah.
Let's see what he chooses to go for here.
He's given a lot of thought here of what he wants to do. I mean, he has an Invigorate in his hand, so that could be card number 6. And then he can work his way towards Become Immense. There's also a Vine to the Vastwood, too, so.
Well, with the Invigorate and Become Immense, he could, I think, successfully go for a kill here.
I do, too. It depends on how he taps his mana and what he elects to do.
So he's going to go for the Become Immense on Glistener Elf. And if that resolves, I imagine he just pitches the Invigorate, too.
Yep.
Once it becomes a 7/7, there's no killing it. And Ryan with multiple copies of Become Immense. Generally just one in Tom Ross's list. Ryan has added a second.
This is, you know, like, this is like the worst feeling. Attack, pump my creature.
Well, this is why it's a tough matchup for burn, is because this is a 1 green for a 12-point burn spell.
Yeah.
It's 4 lava spikes in 1.
Yeah. It's like, if you're Jim, am I supposed to react? Because, you know, I've seen what Tom is able to do with this deck. They oftentimes have, like, the Force of Will, the Invigorate here. So, and Jim's way to get this off the table is a Fire Blast.
Yeah, what Jim doesn't know right now, I mean, he's dead both ways. The Invigorate in Ryan's hand is going to get him, whether he chooses to Fire Blast or not. And Fire Blasting here feels really awful, you know. Ryan's nowhere near dead.
It's like, here's
You're
the
stacking
thing.
your lands.
He's not casting Become Immense for, like, funsies, you know. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to do this and just hope this works out. I don't have anything. I don't have anything after
this. I can't save it. Please don't counter this, please. You know,
yeah.
Like, so.
There's a price of progress.
Ryan made daze here just so he can pick up a land.
He will not want to daze, because then he will not be able to cast Invigorate.
You do have to have a forest
Yeah.
to play Invigorate. You're
does
absolutely
not
right.
want to daze. All right.
Takes 4. There is a second clause on Invigorate. You can't. It's not just free.
There's Invigorate.
And that's a lethal attack.
Yeah. All he can do is shrug his shoulders and say, yeah, you got me. Ryan Macedo is going to win game number 1 here over Jim Davis. Infect is up a game over Burn. Going to be a fast match here, folks, as we turn our attention to the sideboard. Davis with his Burn deck, 2 copies of Pith Needle, 3 Relic Progenas, 3 copies of Smash the Smithereens, 3 Ensnaring Bridge, also Fury Vortex, a Mindbreak Trap, a Satyr Fire Dancer, and a Searing Blood. I actually like the last 2 the most. Searing Blood, really good against these creatures, obviously. And Satyr Fire Dancer, you get to point the Burn everywhere then.
Yeah, the idea is the Burn deck wants to play as many of these Searing Blades, Searing Blood style effects that it can in this matchup. It would like to just kill every creature as it comes down. So, yeah, cards like Satyr Fire Dancer, Searing Blood, imagine that we'll see those getting boarded in. Outside of that, he could, I suppose, attempt to Ensnaring Bridge, but the Infect deck might be a little fast for that.
What do we have on the other side here for Infect?
Well, on the other side, Ryan has a couple of weapons. He has a copy of Spellskite. That's excellent in the matchup, as it can redirect burn spells and removal spells. He has 2 copies of Spell Pierce, and he has 3 copies of Hydroblast. These are all really good weapons for the matchup, and things that I think take an already good matchup and tilt it even harder in Ryan's favor.
Some people are telling me on Twitter not to believe in movie volcanoes. Well, what else do I have to go off of, people?
Are they saying Mount Rainier's not a volcano?
No, I should be more worried about Lahar's if Mount Rainier erupts. I assume that's another volcano in the Seattle area. And apparently it's the pyroclastic flow that would get you before the lava does. That comes out at close to 100 kph. That's
well,
fast.
It's not just lava that comes out of a volcano. There's a bunch of stuff that comes out, and none of it's good for you.
Yeah, there's like ash. I've seen that in the movies.
A lot of times, I think it's actually like things like the air becomes unbreathable that actually gets you before the lava does a lot of the time.
I see. That doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah, it's rocks, volcanoes, you don't want to be near them. They're bad news.
So what you're telling me is that I can't outrun a volcano if it erupts, like I've seen in movies like Dante's Peak.
Yeah, where like the lava's flowing toward them and they just have to run from it.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't.
It goes
advise
faster than that.
against that.
Oh, okay. I think the movie should be more realistic then. That would be nice. If you could actually have a better idea of what was actually going to happen. You know, that's all I ask. Volcanoes are kind of sweet, though. Something about a volcano that seems kind of sweet.
That's like at the movies when someone's on a really elevator that's falling really fast, and right before it hits the ground, they jump up and they like reach onto something. You're like, I jumped right before impact. I'm fine. I was going up, not down.
Funny you speak about that. That's my plan in case a plane crashes.
Yeah, just right before it hits the ground, you jump.
Jump. That's my plan.
And then you'll just land on the ground like it took a little hop. It'll be great, but you have to time it.
Yeah, it's really
timing's really
it's all
hard.
about the timing, which again you can't practice. So you got one shot.
But if you jump at just the right time,
One
you're
shot
fine.
at the jump, and I think in my head it's going to work the way I want it to. That's what I think.
I'll tell you, when I was really young, I did not understand why that wouldn't work. I remember coming up with this and thinking I was brilliant.
I'm really old, and I do understand why it wouldn't work.
And then then we learned about this thing called like momentum.
Yeah.
And then jumping before impact doesn't really.
See, my big plan is, there's trouble with the airplane, it's going down, so you open up the exit row and you like climb on the wing,
and then you jump on the wing.
You hold on the wing, yeah, and then just right before the plane's gonna crash, give or take, and you just jump like right into the ocean, and it's just like it's like jumping into a pool. You're fine.
Now, if you want to get into the physics of it, if your legs are very muscular, that would work.
They are
very muscular.
I go to the gym 4 times a week.
If you can exert enough pressure downward on that jump to jump hard enough, you're fine.
I have a personal trainer at my gym. We do quite a few leg workouts.
So you might be fine, actually, depending on just how, I don't know what the number of leg workouts you're going to have to do to make this work, but if you hit that number, you'll be okay.
I'm going to have to add some plates to the press, it sounds like. That's fine. Should be all right. Pyroclastic flow. Oh, wow. This is really good. A pyroclastic flow is a fast-moving current of hot gas. The gas can reach temperatures of about 1,830 degrees Fahrenheit.
So remember I said the air is not particularly breathable. It's not just, I didn't mean like it's just dirty with ash. It also like melts your lungs, okay? It's you don't want to breathe it. Now, volcanoes are bad news.
1,830 degrees Fahrenheit at 450 miles per hour. I don't think the GG is necessary. It doesn't sound like a very good game, Mr. Lubu Fu.
You wouldn't have time
Twitter.
to shake. You wouldn't have time to GG back. It would,
No, I can't shake back?
No, it's just.
Okay. All right.
The game's over before you. It's like if I GG'd you before we even presented decks.
I can't do anything. I can't respond.
Right.
Jim is going to be on the play here for game number 2. Down a game to infect.
Volcanoes don't pass priority.
All right, players, this is the last call. Standard Open Toronto, where you have a chance of winning.
I see an interesting hand here for Jim. There's a Rift Bolt over there. I think the problem with his hand right now, as you can see, and it's actually the nice thing about seeing snow-covered mountains, is there are 4 lands over there.
1, 2, 3,
4.
4.
Ooh, but he's got a Fire Dancer and a Searing Blaze. I think those are too good to mulligan.
Yeah, and if you're on a Fire Dancer strategy, you may not be that upset with having a lot of lands.
I actually think that Fire Dancer is like his trump card in this matchup, and I think it's almost too good to mulligan.
He needs to not get dazed, though, so maybe he has to play it on turn 3 or something like that. But you're right, it's incredible in the matchup. Infect does not actually have removal for creatures outside of the Hydroblasts that are in Ryan's board. So if Jim can land this Fire Dancer, he'll be great.
You don't know. I mean, we know that Ryan does not have Piracy Charm, but Tom has had Piracy Charm before. He had it in Columbus when we watched him, so some people may adopt that, some people may not. So that could be Jim's fear. The +2/-1 effect on Piracy Charm could take care of the Fire Dancer, though Ryan is going to take a mulligan. Jim has elected to keep.
Yeah, so he'll be going down to 6 here. See if he does have an answer, but be it Daze, Force of Will, or Hydroblast for this Fire Dancer. The Fire Dancer is a 1-of in Jim's sideboard.
It's a good 1-of, though.
It's excellent in this matchup.
And the way the format's shaping up, too, it actually might be a better card moving forward. There's a lot of Stoneforge Mystics running around, a healthy amount of Delver's Secrets. We know there's a lot of copies of Young Pyromancer. So, some nice options. Well, there is a Daze. Now, this is a really interesting hand. There's a Daze and a Hydroblast, a copy of a Come Immense. Here's Goblin Guide, Trigger. Take a look. Noble Hierarch. Ryan didn't have a creature, He doesn't have an Infect creature in his hand right now. The top card is Noble Hierarch, so he'll have a creature, though it doesn't have Infect. So it's not a bad start for Ryan. Had to keep a 6-star hand that's not great, but good enough. Tropical Island going to come down. There is your Hierarch. This will allow Ryan to be able to cast his Daze or his Invigorate if he'd like to.
Yeah, Daze, Hydroblast, Become Immense, Invigorate, land. No Infectors just yet. And Jim may just have the classic double Goblin Guide draw, not caring.
It is very interesting how he's supposed to move forward here, what cards he's supposed to play around. For example, he has a copy of Searing Blaze in his hand. Is he supposed to kill this? Or is he supposed to save Searing Blaze for an Effect creature? It's also even more difficult because he does have the 3 snow-covered mountains in his hand, but none of these lands are fetch lands. So, you know, you can kind of delay or time your Searing Blaze, but he doesn't have the ability to do that just yet. And you know he doesn't want to draw another land.
Yeah, so because he has a second Goblin Guide drawn here, I was going to say he might be able to just play around Daze and making Goblin Guide this turn. So he's just going to go ahead and swing 2.
Mr. Rainforest added to the grip, but it looks like Ryan's just going to take 2. So because he's drawn a land, his mulligan has basically been undone. And now here's, say, the Fire Dancer. I have to imagine it's going to get dazed, yeah.
And that was one of the risks, having such a good card there, getting it dazed.
Take a draw. Copy of Berserk.
To be fair, the Fire Dancer is probably not long for this game anyway. You still see that Hydroblast hiding out in Ryan's hand. If Jim had snuck it by a Daze, you'd think it would eat the Hydroblast.
There's the Trop again. See if Ryan has any interest in attacking here. The texture of his hand is very different. It's funny because we could actually, as ridiculous as this sounds, we could actually be in line for like a regular damage kill. Hierarch is 1, Become Immense is 7. Invigorate makes it 11, Berserk makes it 22.
Yeah, these all combine very nicely to just make a damage kill.
I mean, we don't see it very often, but it's not out of the question. Davis draws a copy of Searing Blaze.
The trickiest thing was that Ryan doesn't have enough cards in his graveyard yet for Become Immense.
Yep. Goblin Guide. Thumbs up. Beatdowns and triggers. The first one, Noble Hierarch. The second one, Noble Hierarch.
I always show it twice in that situation. I do flip it down and flip it up again.
I'm drawing this one next turn. Perhaps a defensive Invigorate. There's a blast.
Hydroblast. I was surprised for the defensive Invigorate here.
Yeah, if you're Jim, you get to blow him out so good here.
Yeah, I thought I was going to use it for the, as you said, kind of the 22 point kill.
Yeah, this ends up working out great for Jim. Like, if your opponent has a Daze, it's whatever. Like, you can't do anything about it, but you're going to try to take the opportunity to do this, and you're going to succeed. So 3 damage is going to go to Noble Hierarch, 3 damage is going to go to Ryan. The Goblin Guide won't deal any damage because it was blocked by Noble Hierarch, but overall, I think a pretty good turn for Jim.
It does take the lethal off the board for Ryan, but it's still a lot of damage, actually, that he can deal with just this Noble Hierarch. And the Berserk and Become Immense does put it up to 7, 8 on the attack. It is still 16, so he would need to redraw a pump spell.
Does have a backup Noble Hierarch to cast. We know that's his draw for the turn. Just deciding what land he wants to play between Misty Rainforest or a forest. He's just going to deploy an actual forest.
Helps him play around, well, Price of Progress, because he can't actually fetch a basic with the Misty.
Yep.
He only has 1 forest in his deck.
And pass it.
Interesting to see how... I was surprised about that block that he made the Invigorate play. He could also have... You know, he can use Berserk to kill Goblin Guide, actually, if he really wanted to get rid of the card.
You can get really, really creative with that.
You can do it in combat after damage, so you don't actually take the additional damage off Berserk, I believe.
Of the many tales of Tom Russell and his Infect, the one that most people don't know is that at the Grand Prix last weekend, he beat an Elishnorn that was in play, which is basically impossible. Yeah. Now, Tom doesn't concede, he just plays on, so a lot of people, when they're playing Infect, if you were to put an Elishorn in play, they would concede.
He berserked it.
That's correct.
Okay, I thought, so he can't win with it on the board.
Yep.
Okay.
So he was getting beaten down. His opponent put Elishorn in play. Top stuff died. He's getting beaten down, and he's just, basically just playing draw go or whatever. Draws berserk, and he goes, oh, okay. Draws berserk, kills it. The opponent is just drawing horribly, and then Tom worked his way back into killing him on his way to making the finals of the tournament.
Sure.
So a defensive berserk, it is a thing.
You see the flip off Goblin Guy, there's actually a Croson Grip on top of Ryan's deck. That's out of his sideboard. He has 2 copies there.
Some interesting things to kill. The first card that comes to mind is Sulfuric Vortex, but we can't forget that Eidolon of the Great Revel is an enchantment.
Sure. So he has 5 targets?
Yep. And depending on what he boards in, if anything. Another copy of Searing Blaze here going upstairs. And now there's a Lava Spike 2. So Jim is working away at the life total. Ryan is down to 6. Jim will lose his Goblin Guide, but not a bad turn here.
Jim's out of cards, though. Ryan down to 3. See, with that Croson Grip and Become Immense has his remaining 2 cards.
Jim with just a mountain for the turn, it looked like. Yeah, he'll pass it.
3, a dangerous life total to be at in this matchup.
I think there's another copy of Become Immense.
It's the second one.
You want to talk about dangerous.
Well, he doesn't have the Berserk anymore, so it's not as dangerous. I do not believe he has 10 cards in his graveyard.
I don't think his graveyard's that deep yet.
He'd only need 9, actually, because the first Become Immense would add. And
it's a Lightning Bolt.
Ryan at 3, drawing a Lightning Bolt. Well, there's a clear way to use it here.
Yeah, assuming the life totals are correct. He's going to pass the turn back. I do like the upkeep. Make sure that you time everything correctly. Some people might look at that as like, why did Jim slow roll? But it's actually just playing appropriately.
Yeah. As long as you don't sit there and tank it, just be like, okay, go, upkeep, bolt. You just say it that way.
Yeah. The reason for that, of course, is because if Ryan has a card like Blue Blast or Hydro Blast, it means he has to tap mana on his actual turn. So that's the reason you do it there, and that's the reason Jim Davis is able to tie things up here with his burn deck against Infect. That means we're headed to game number 3 here in just a moment. Let's see if players want to change anything. Actually, looks like Ryan's sideboard is pretty good for this matchup. Kind of like his setup with these Hydro Blasts. 3 copies of those are out.
3 Hydro Blasts are great. I think the Spell Pierces are good. Spell Skite's good. I'm not sold yet on the Croson Grips.
I think they're too narrow.
Yeah, I would wait and see how Jim boards. If he has some very hateful card in his sideboard, maybe you can board that in. If you're expecting something like Ensnaring Bridge, there's an argument to be had. But even then, Noble Hierarch actually can swing under Ensnaring Bridge.
Well, before game number 3 does start here, players are going to shuffle up. We will talk about Magic's web comic in cardboard crack. 3 books available on StarCityGames.com.
Yeah, so these are, if you haven't seen the series before, it's a really great webcomic series parodying different parts of Magic, the game, and the kind of culture that surrounds it. You can learn more about it at StarCityGames.com/cardboardcrack. 3 editions of their comics now on sale, each book $12.99 each.
I like Infect in this matchup.
Yeah, I've been looking at these games. I've liked them. Jim did game 2, and you can't... There are a lot of things went his way. Ryan mulliganed to 6. Jim had 2 Searing Blazes, which seems like maybe his most important card in the matchup.
The big one that Jim hasn't drawn yet, he hasn't revealed it yet either. It's the 3 copies of Grim Lavamancer.
That's excellent here.
Those show up, he's got a chance. They don't show up, I don't know if he can win this game. It's just because, again, the 3 copies of Hydro Blast are just... you have to try to overload that with something, Searing Blazes and Grim Lavamancers, and you hope maybe Ryan uses them incorrectly. I don't know, but I think it's so important for Jim to draw that card. And if he does, and Ryan doesn't draw Hydro Blast, we're looking at a different game entirely.
You can't understate just how good of a card Hydro Blast is. At 1 mana, it's a counter spell plus a Vindicate in this matchup. It's very strong here. And with Ryan on the play, even if Jim does have a turn 1 Grim Lavamancer, he has to play around cards like Daze, because Ryan gets to drop a land before Jim's turn. There are a lot of things that are difficult here for Jim.
And Davis has moved on to Burn recently. He was a Goblins player like myself. We tried to till the bitter end, but eventually another attack from a Batter Skull, you break eventually. You can't deal with those GT counters anymore, so He gave Delver Strategies a try, Stoneforge, Stoneblade decks 2, and now he's giving Burn a go. Again, we saw him get 9th place on Breakers when we were in Worcester a little while back. He's off to a nice start here, looking at Open Series points. 4-1 with a couple rounds to go. What looks to be a pretty close matchup. If Ryan is favored here, I don't think it's by a wide amount or a large amount, but I think he is still slightly favored.
It seems like a solid favorite to me here. Yeah, it's winnable from the Burn side, but I definitely think this is in Ryan's camp, just because all of Jim's removal is very tenuous at best. You know, he's burning these creatures, and so when Ryan has a pump spell, Jim's always on the wrong side of that exchange. If Jim has to flinch first, if he has to try for the burn spell, Ryan's pump in response is just so good.
Well, Jim is happy with this configuration, so let's shuffle up, get ready for game number 3. Will, the New York Rangers fan. Number 7 on our Season 4 leaderboard. If we ended things right now, he'd be in for Roanoke, and you know, he's another player, like Kevin Jones too, who's played a lot of IQs. Now, Jim has had Open Series success over the years. He's an invitational runner-up. A couple of years back, we've seen him in the top 4 in a really, really good match, actually, against Ross Merriam when Ross was working on his back-to-back weekend. Jim is one of the first people to actually say, you know, I think it's correct to remove detentions here from blue-white control and play Planar Cleansing instead. He had written some articles about that, then put his money where his mouth was, and made the semifinals in Providence with that deck. So he's been playing a lot of Magic this year. He actually was on a cruise during Grand Prix New Jersey, so that's why we didn't see him that weekend. He's actually found that was one of the few times he could actually take away from Magic, as the Open Series was off that weekend. So we didn't see him last weekend, but we see him here. Okay tournament yesterday, got some Open Series points. Pretty good tournament so far. Could be working his way towards a great tournament if he can get the win here.
At 4-1, remember this tournament was actually just over the cutoff for 8 rounds. So most players will just have to make it to a 7-1 record. That should be good enough for a top 8 finish. So these players 3 wins out from the top 8. Remember, a player like Jim could definitely use those extra points. He is getting some distance between him and the cutoff, though. It's doing a lot for his Players' Championship chances this weekend.
And for Jim, again, if you follow his articles in the Select Side of Star City Games or just know him, one of his goals this year, he said, I want to play in the Players' Championship. That's like goal number 1 for me, is be there at the end of the year in Roanoke, battling for that $20,000 with those 16 competitors. And he's well on his way. We don't have many weeks to go. Take a look at that opening. And I see a fetch on over there. What I think I see is too many copies of Fire Blast.
Well, the first copy you won every hand. The second one you can sometimes can be actually great. The third one's terrible.
Yeah. Ryan looks like he's already kept his hand.
It looks like Jim may have a copy of Sulfuric Vortex here as well.
I don't love it. It seems okay in the matchup.
2 lands, 5 spells. Hard to ship back when you're a burn player. That's the right distribution.
Yep, you don't want to be 3-4. Unless your hand was what Jim had last game, which was like the 3. I think that's like one of the few 3-spell 4 land hands I would keep with Fire Dancer because it's so big in the matchup and Searing Blaze.
Oh yeah, 4 land. You can maybe go 3-4 the other way. Having 3-4 in favor, 3 lands, 4 spells is fine.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, excuse me, he had 4 lands last game. He had 4 lands, 3 spells, which I think the only way you can keep that is with the cards that he had. You'll probably keep 3 lands, 4 spells a decent amount of the time with this deck. But I think you want to be 2-5, as you mentioned, a lot. Maybe draw 1 more land in the game. Hopefully no more than that.
Jim tanking on this one. Rift Bolt, Fire Blast, looks like 2 lands.
It's a big decision. Yeah.
I'll go with it.
It looks like the judge is even saying, hey, gotta make a decision, my friend. Can't sit here forever. All right.
These players both at 4-1. Burn, an interesting choice for this weekend. It's a deck that has a game against Delver and Infect, and actually is one of the decks right now which I think could really stand up to lands.
Yeah, I like Burn a lot, especially in that matchup. I think the matchup is pretty close. You know, you get to play Price of Progress, which is good for obvious reasons, you know.
Yeah.
But you are also a little bit scared as here's a Brainstorm in response to Goblin Guide, so he can set up his deck how he wants to. But you are a little bit scared of the fact that they can make a Dark Depth so fast and kill you really quickly, or crop rotation for Glacial Chasm and sit behind that if things line up appropriately. So
I was going to say Ryan was digging for a daze here for the Goblin guy, but on look here, looks like Ryan already had the daze before he cast Brainstorm. So it seems likely that he'll daze a turn 1 Goblin Guide. It's definitely the best start out of the burn deck.
Two cards are going to go back. You have to imagine a land's going to be on top, so Goblin Guide draws him a card.
Yep.
Well, today's, never mind.
And
See you later.
There.
Now, I wonder if Jim is okay with like that getting days versus maybe an important burn spell.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't put a land. I mean, I guess if you put a land on top, you're going to end up discarding.
Yeah, that's true.
Because daze bounces a card to your hand, too.
Yeah. Ooh,
Which isn't that bad.
Eidolon's not bad.
Ryan at the ready with a Hydroblast.
Yeah. I think you just have to play the Eidolon, hope he doesn't have an answer.
Eidolon, a must counter card in this situation. It gets most of Ryan's deck.
Yep. It's countered. Pass it back. Ryan will draw another card that he knows about. It's a copy of Blighted Agent.
And Ryan's happy with this trading game early on. Jim needs to resolve 6 cards to win the game because of the nature of how a burn deck works. Whereas Ryan can win off 2 resolved spells. You know, a creature will keep on hitting, and then a timely pump spell can be all he needs.
Chain Lightning the draw.
And Jim is caught in a difficult spot again where he knows he needs to kill Ryan's creatures. But at the same time, every spell that gets rid of a creature is not going at Ryan.
Yep. He says, you know, I'll just sacrifice Spell St. Mire now. Get myself a mountain, thank you much. You know he's got a Chain Lightning. It's just always scary when your opponent just plays an infect creature, you're just thinking, okay, am I gonna die next turn? Like, yeah. Really? Am I just dead already? Like,
yeah, you have to kill them.
Yeah.
Especially because Jim's not very good at answering pump spells, rather.
A couple copies of Riftbolt in hand. He's going to suspend them both and then pass the turn back. Last 2 cards are a Fire Blast and a Sulfuric Vortex in Davis's hand.
Well, Vortex is great for Davis. He spent a lot of his cards either getting countered or on Ryan's creatures. So Ryan's still at 19, so Jim's going to need a card that can do a lot of damage. Sulfuric Vortex is excellent for that position.
Vortex lines up really well this particular game, too. What's interesting about Vortex here is that on this turn, I don't think Ryan wants to play a creature, right? There are 2 Riftbolts on suspend. So if Riftbolt goes off suspend, Jim can just go, okay, fire away and target that. So, you know, Ryan might make this a setup turn with Brainstorm or just do nothing like he is right now. And Jim can just, now Jim actually has a window to play Vortex when there's nothing on the table.
If Ryan had another creature, he could have... The hard part is that when you have 2 Riftbolts on suspend, you actually have to choose both their targets before you see if the first one's resolving.
Sure.
So Jim has to either choose to go both at a creature or both at Ryan. So if Ryan does have a pump spell in response, Jim can't, you know, suddenly kill it with the other Riftbolt.
There's a Vortex.
Jim's draw a land, so he can now play around days. Here we go, Vortex, doing a lot of work.
Here's a Brainstorm in response. Couple of cards. Wooded Foothills among them here for Ryan.
Well, now we get to see, did Ryan keep in those Krosan Grips from last game? One of those would be an excellent draw right now.
You know he had at least one in his deck after sideboard.
Gets to end step Brainstorm here. See some Spell Pierces. Spell Pierce typically very good in this matchup. I'm not sure Ryan wants to be keeping them anymore. It doesn't seem likely that they're gonna catch a relevant spell. Jim has 4 lands in play. His burn's already on the table. See, Ryan looks like he's gonna get rid of one of those 2 pierces.
Yep.
Actually, oh, this is in response to the Vortex. Never mind, he's piercing the Vortex.
Yeah, this is all in response, and now Pierce is gonna take care of that.
Well, that's excellent then.
Yeah, no, Ryan's in a great spot now. Jim has 1 card left. It's a copy of Fire Blast. And that just doesn't line up very well against whatever creature Ryan likes to play. And you can see the crop rotation in Ryan's hand. just don't think of that as crop rotation. Think of that as Inkmoth Nexus. It's probably easier that way.
Yeah.
Maybe you can think of it as Pendlehaven.
Pendlehaven. That's the other thing he often finds here.
Jim will draw. I think it was a mountain.
Only 3 copies of Inkmoth Nexus in Ryan Macedo's deck. Typically, you see a 4th.
And his deck has done just a really nice job of weathering the storm this game. Goblin Guy got taken care of. Eidolon got taken care of. You know, those permanent sources of damage are what are so important to the burn deck. Rift Bolts, sure, they came off, dealt him 6. Chain Lightning took care of a Blighted Agent, but he had a backup creature, and then Vortex got countered.
Well, because the plan of burn is to resolve 6 spells, these counter spells that Ryan keeps throwing out have just been backbreaking. You see, if you look at Ryan's graveyard, you see a Daze, a Hydroblast, and a Spell Pierce, and all 3 of them caught something. And Jim has only, the only spells Jim's actually resolved have been Rift Bolts.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I expect to see Infect kind of trend upward. You know, before it was, I think only Tom Ross can get the job done with this deck. And to be fair, Tom is, you know, the best Infect player, so I understand where people are coming from. But I think that once it has that success in the 4,000-person Grand Prix where Tom makes it to the finals with the deck, I think more people are inclined to go, you know what? All right, I think this deck is super legitimate. I'm going to give it a shot.
If an invitational win wasn't enough, then that GP runner-up finish really should be. The deck's, you know, having played against it too, it's real.
Yeah, it's legit. Tom has won too many games in too many absurd ways for me to think that the deck isn't real. And just watching this game right now and just seeing kind of the resiliency of the deck, it's just a good deck. There's an Invigorate.
As we've seen before, this is a tough spot because if Ryan's playing 1 pound spell, it means he has another one in his hand.
And Jim's going to float some mana, play Fire Blast.
Yeah.
Invigorate again.
There's no good way for Jim to play around this. So say he doesn't respond to the first Invigorate, then Ryan makes a second one anyway.
Yep.
Because then Fire Blast just isn't an answer.
I don't think he's got another pump spell. I could be wrong. Actually,
I believe he has Vines of
Vines,
Astor.
yeah. So he's just going pump, pump.
Actually interesting that he didn't lead on Vines because Vines gives your creature hexproof.
Yeah.
So if he starts on Vines, I believe that he can just...
I think he can just win either way, you know? Like, I don't think it really matters in what order he goes. You know, unless, like, a card like Sudden Shock is worked into the equation here, which you laugh, but we saw it last weekend. So, you know, it's very possible for that to be a card that people are playing. And now I think we're going to see the Vines of the Vastwood kicker. Yep.
Vines of the kicker, so that's 12 points of pump here, and nothing Burn can do about it. Ryan Macedo moves on to 5-1 with Infect.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a tough matchup for Burn.
Well, you just saw both times in games 1 and 3, and Ryan went for the kill. There wasn't much counterplay that Jim had. He had a